Okay, good morning, traders, and welcome to Trade the Structure and the trading day morning jumpstart. So we'll take a look at the action from overnight, what happened in the US markets. Just coming to the Asian market session, so about to kick that off. The Hang Seng's actually closed today, so I won't be trading that, just to let you know ahead of time. So we'll look at the levels anyway. We'll start off with the ASX 200. So we've got the SPY on the screen here, and then we'll look at a bigger picture view on the ASX 200, probably I think it's a 15-minute chart, and then we'll go through the rest. So the action from yesterday was pretty much ramped up from the open and then pretty much went sideways into the close. So a lot of the heavy lifting's done overnight. We're continually seeing this day after day. It's like the market sort of hangs around during the day, just flushes people around, and then waits for the US to open and then ramps up again as the US ramps up. So we're getting dragged along by the action in the US markets, and everyone's just sitting around waiting to see how they're going to go with the interest rate. And we're talk of interest rate rises, but it's getting brushed aside at the moment. The yield curve, which is a big thing for a lot of Twitter people at the moment, and it was interesting to listen to someone else. So I do respect what they say, and they're 2 and 10 inverted yield curve, which is it precedes a recession, but it doesn't precede it straight away. It could be a couple of years away. So that's what history has told us. But everyone's saying, the crash is imminent, but it doesn't mean it's imminent right now. There could be something down the track. It may not be a big crash. It may just be, a bit of a fluff in the pan. So that's what the talk is at the moment, and that remains inverted, which is probably it's a leading indicator of what could happen to the equity markets. Now we're coming into US earnings season. I think it kicks off first full week of April. I think it could be next week. Kicks off, and then so that's what the US market's sort of priming for. So that could be buoyant through there, just depending on what the results come out. Now, US always tend to underestimate and over deliver. So what they sort of come out and say, we don't expect much next quarter, and they come out and blast out of the ground what they actually what they forecast previously. So expect some sort of, it could be a bit of chop. It's going to be a bit of a messy action. I think there's still some nervousness around with regards to inflation. We've got oil kicking up again on the back of more sanctions to Russia. So that's adding to those inflation concerns. But the US market's taking it in its stride at the moment, and the rest of the world's going with it. So what we saw on the SPY overnight, we've got the markets really extended up into that 75.23. But you can see as the momentum's coming off, the market's still extending. So it doesn't mean divergence. You could look at anything. You could look at the fact that we could be coming back to that zero line. We're set out for another rally today, which could mean that we're going to head up. I haven't got the market lined up, but up into highs, we could really, I'd ideally like to see a flush down to 75.09 and then start to hold another high low. I don't really want to see that ramp up and then go sideways, because there's just no trades in that. Even off the lower time frame charts, it's really hard to get a bit of a ramp, and then you're looking for shorts more than anything else. Okay, so what I'm looking for is some sort of level where a bit of a flush, and see if you can hold that 75.09 level and see if we can get a higher low off that level, because the market is still bullish. Okay, looking at the bigger time frame charts, you can see there's a nice sort of cup there, and we're heading higher now. So longer term, we're probably heading to new all-time highs. I mean, that's the way it looks at the moment. That's the way the market's gearing up, and that's the way I think it's been ramped. So if we can sort of flush down, hold this inside level like we're talking about in the SPY, and see if we can get a higher low off that level, great. It could just sort of chop around this level of 75.52, flush around that, dragging in some sellers, pushing them back out, or dragging in some buyers and pushing them back out. We don't know just yet, so we just wait to see that open. You can see the momentum slowing as we get a bit higher. We've got through this level, so it could be a bit of a, we've trapped some longs above that 75.52, squeeze them out on the open, come back down to 75.37 and ramp up. So that ideally, that's what I'm looking for. Looking at the overnight markets, the Asian markets. What am I talking overnight? Asian markets, we're looking at the Hang Seng. Now, that was a good little ramp. You can see, I think the open was about here, a good flush into that support level. I was chasing Mattel yesterday, to be quite honest. I missed the actual buying opportunity just after that break, so I wasn't expecting that sort of strength straight off the bat, which played out quite nicely. There was really only one really minor setup for the long side, so it really, a lot of these markets are getting flushed down on the open and then ramping. Okay, so you can see that. We'll see that in the US, flush down and then ramp. The Hang Seng actually, it did pop up on the open, but did get that early flush before it got ramped up. So that 22.135 held. Now, what we're seeing here is that's the extension, and you can see from that sort of found support in here, flushed this support zone, and then we've got a good leg up, okay, before we start to roll over. And that, to me, is just an equal move. Okay, that's equal to that move up, initial move up. That's your extended move up. So I ideally wanting to see, I don't really, it's going to be hard to get long in here, hard, unless we get a decent flush on the open. If we can get a good flush on the open, and then we can get ramped up to that 22,663. So I ideally want to see a flush on the open and then a pump up. Otherwise, I feel that we're going to sort of pop through this high, 22,663. It's going to drag in a lot of buyers on that break, expecting this trend up to continue, and then see if we can get a lower high and a bit of a selling off, bit of a sell off into that lower high. But have to wait and see the open how that plays out. Now, the Nikkei was one also that sort of flushed on the open, flushed into that support zone, 27,595, before it started to lift. Now, that didn't do much at all. Closed at around 4 o'clock, so it closed just around here on the index. So it's going to gap up on the index. The underlying index is going to gap up quite a bit. We'll just see what it could gap. Say it closed around the 4 o'clock mark, even if it was around here. Somewhere around 200 points on the open, the index is expected to gap. Now that's going to take us up into some resistance zones. You can see by the index here, the CFD price, it's popped up in that 28,040 before it started to get a bit heavy into the close. Now, whether it's going to sort of flush this 27,945, 942, and start to hold and ramp back up again, we'll just wait and see how it opens. But you can see that momentum's well and truly come off. Price hasn't really flushed too much of this longs out, so we may need to flush. I'd ideally like to see that pop back up above and then find a lower high that can work a secondary leg down to just really put a lot of these longs from this move up, especially overnight, under pressure. I want to see them put under pressure. Otherwise, we've got an extension level just up here at 28,110 through this resistance zone. So, yeah, there's a lot to work out. We just have to wait and see, but we've got our plan of attack in action. The Dow. Now, this is that flush. I think it was a couple 100-point flush, which is, and that was straight off the bat. Now, I was up watching that. I was expecting that flush on the open, but I just didn't get the setup. I mean, even on the 1 minute chart, if you're looking right down to the 1 minute chart, there was no real pullback. Okay, so ideally, what I'm looking for, if the 5 minute is looking like it's just heading south, or 30 minute or whatever, I'm generally looking at the 5 minute. The 5 minute can be a straight move down, but what you want to see on the one is that sort of a pullback. You're getting this kind of action. Well, looking a bit nicer than that, but that kind of action, we got the lower highs to work into. Now, there was really nothing. It was just one candle after another, bang, straight down, big flush, and you can see it a bit later on, bounced all the way straight back up again. Okay, so that was just putting some of these buys, dragging in some sellers on the open, putting some of these buys from the overnight session, which is the Asian market session, the European session, flushing them out of the action, okay, squeezing them out, and it ramps straight back up again. So it just means that, whether it's the algos really starting to flush, they can get a better price and start to lift it. So their gains, rather than buying on the breakout here, well, you might buy the break there. We've only got a few, really, by the time you hit the close, you've got 58 points, the maximum about 90 to 100 points. If you can take it from that low, you've got a 300-point rally. Okay, so intraday, it's quite profitable, and that's why you look for those flushes. Okay, so looking at US tech, you've got the Nasdaq was pretty much all one-way action from the open. I don't know if that was supported, but the news that was it Elon Musk bought 9.2 or 9.5% of Twitter. I think he's just sick of getting censored, so he thought, hey, what better way to not get censored is to own some of the company and really start throwing your weight around. So he might have other plans. I think he's just got the money to start really proving a point to some of these companies. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But I think that's what supported the Nasdaq, and in turn the Nasdaq supports the overall broader market because, like I said, the S&P 500 is a handful of, you've got 5 or 6 stocks that can really move that market up and down. Okay, so if the Nasdaq's moving up or down, that's the barometer for the overall market at the moment, the broader market, especially if you're trading indices. So you've got, that was the open here at 11:30, straight up. You can see it didn't really do anything. It's held the higher low in here, which should have had a bit of a flush lower coming into the open, ramped straight up through 14,956, then straight up through 15,060, and it was pretty much all one-way action into the close. There was no flush lower at all. So this market looks like it can easily head to 15,267. Okay, would expect to potentially flush if it's going to do that, a bit of a flush on the open, and then a bit of a higher low we could work off, maybe an inside higher low, something like this, maybe into this level here at 15,060. But I would like to see, considering the market's so stretched, I would like to see a higher low to play off. Okay, the DAX. Now the DAX index, it's coming up into that 14,565. You got the same sort of thing. This is what I was saying about those flushes on the open, big flush in the open where they can start to, squeeze out some liquidity and in search of other buying opportunities. Flush that, buy it down here, you get a better fill, and then get more of a ramp, and it ramps back up into that 14,565. So a bit like the DAX, sorry, the Dow. If you get that sort of move there, it's 187 points, as opposed to when it was trading up here on the open, from the open, 6 o'clock, 4 o'clock. So it opened and closed roughly at the same level. It was only up a few points by the time it closed. But the range for the day was that big flush down. You've got a nice little move up off here, and that gave you, by the time you closed, 150 points. So that was really worthwhile. And you've got this move here off this retest fail. You've got a retest fail in here. That's the anchor to the leg up. Come back in, retest it. You'll see that just in here. So prime little move, and it started to rally. So even if you're trading off just that intra-session, intraday, you've got a nice little move up of about 88 points. Okay, so you can see the DAX, it's a bit heavy at that level there, so I'd be interested. You got a little sort of minor retest fail, double top, which is hanging in at the moment. At that zone, we had that push up here, flushed into the 75.84 before it failed. Then we've got a little double top or a little minor retest fail here, which could see the market move back down on the open, another flush down into that 75.45 area. So, I mean, it could go lower. Well, we'll just have to wait and see whether this actually is going to, this lower high, and you've got this high here. If you can extend that down, you take that down there, it could just really start to extend through these lows at 75.32, potentially pushing the 75.17. But at the moment, I would expect just a flush in there because I think the markets are still quite strong. The UK is actually looking a little bit heavier than most, and a bit like the DAX as well. Europe's not so convinced that the US is going to continue to chug higher. Okay, so we'll just have to wait and see how that plays out in the next couple of sessions. Now, over to the currencies, we've got the US dollar. US dollar is higher overnight. It's basically from the start of the European session, it went straight up. Okay, before that, it was just going sideways. So that market, like we said before, is being range bound sort of from that 97.60 area up to 99.25. There we go. And it's heading up to sort of 99.25. It's a touch under 99 at the moment. So that sort of pressure, US dollar pressure higher, should be pressuring currencies lower, except for the Aussie dollar. Now, the Aussie dollar is just rampant to the upside at the moment. So you can see it really start to extend higher. Euro is under pressure with that rally in the US dollar, but the Aussie is doing quite well. Okay, you're getting that love for commodities at the moment, and love into the Aussie dollar, and really pressuring higher. So we've got RBA out today, which I don't know. I don't think they're expected to rate rise, but it's coming. It'd have to be coming. Okay, so inflation is a problem. They've talked it up. They're going to be starting to look at rate rises, which is really supporting the Aussie dollar itself. But it looks like the Aussie buying is outweighing the US dollar buying just at the moment. So I'm expecting that there, the fact that it's just holding off that 75.40, I'll be looking for that move up to 75.65, that major resistance zone, which you can see from quite a while ago. Okay, so that would be the move for the Aussie today. Otherwise, if it's not going to do that, it's going to flush down. Okay, it's just suckering in some buyers, and then flush down, have a deeper correction of that move up. Okay, so the euro, like I said, that's more like it's linked to the US dollar, and it really sunk. So that was pretty much 4 o'clock. So that was about the time when the the US dollar started to rally, and you've got that euro really starting to power down. So it's come down into a good little level. So I don't mind if what I'm looking for is a bit like this. That's that longer term channel higher. You can see the two white lines, and we're coming down to support zone. So we're down to the lower end of that channel at the moment, and it's in conjunction with a little support zone at 109.62. So if anything, I'll be looking for a buy, but I wouldn't mind seeing a bit of a flush like we saw there. So we're looking for a sell up here. Instead, it flushed up before we got the selling opportunity. A bit later on, off a lower high, I'll be looking for the same sort of thing. See if you can get that head and shoulders kind of pattern, where you sort of flush down, head back up, and then we get that shoulder to work off and really squeeze out some of these sellers that are built up. Okay, and that would be in conjunction to that US dollar sticking within that range and coming off the top side of the range. Okay, the pound has been been pretty well. It's been held up here. You got that flush, started to hold. We've got that lift we spoke about previously, lifting that zone which held 31.60. Then held lower highs, and it's pressuring back into that 30.88. So at the moment, we could have, the bigger move could be that's the move down, and then we get, a bigger move down potentially into, if we just look across to the left, maybe back into these lows here, which would be, quite nice, or it's going to hold up. Okay, So we're either going to flush through these lows, or we're going to start to hold up here, which I'm sort of banking on the fact that I think the pound is finding some buyers too, and it's finding some support. So if the US dollar starts to roll over, which it very well could do, you look for a rally into the pound and that move up through this level here at 31.28. Okay, so that's ideally what I'd be looking for that 30.88 level to hold this zone through here, and then push up through there and see if we can start to ramp straight back up again as the US dollar is getting sold off. Okay, US yen essentially just going sideways at the moment. Looks like it's going to potentially roll. It's, with that rally up into the US dollar, the US yen has done nothing. So it's a good sort of signal that, the US yen doesn't really want to go too much higher. It doesn't really want there's no more shorts that load up into the yen. And, buying into, so the US dollar is actually going up. There's no shorts loading up into the yen to send that pair higher. Okay, instead, it looks like it's going sideways. So if the US dollar starts to sink, expect that market to start pushing down through 122.405. Okay, gold. Now gold has it's pushed up off that level we spoke about yesterday at 1917. It's sort of flushed into that zone, and it was about 2 o'clock. So it was opening. It was around about here when it opened. Had that little flush, took out the lows. Some of these little minor lows here, and then bounced. Okay, so we got a nice little bounce, nice higher low, and a retest fail off that 1925 area. So I'd be ideally looking to see if we can keep grinding higher to 1950. But gold being gold, could sucker some in, could sort of bounce through that level, flush that level, and then bounce off a higher low, come into the open of the US session. But essentially, you're seeing that longer term MAs are sideways. Okay, and we've got the 10 and the 20 is actually holding up. It's sort of bouncing there, but it's starting to flatten out as well. So we could actually roll over. I'd be looking for that kind of a trade there, or sort of roll a lower high and take us back down through 1917 and potentially lower. Okay, looking at we've got oil here. Oil bounced. They got more sanctions, like I said before, more sanctions onto Russia, economic sanctions, and lifted oil, lifted it up off that 98.25s area. It punched into there. Then we started got this little lift, retested into 101.75 before we lift into 104.67. So 104.67 is the level for me for today. I would be watching that one to see whether we're going to get a bit of a flush and then fade off that level, fade lower, off a lower high, or we're going to do something like this, push up, pull back, retest it, hold on a move up to 107.55 and potentially beyond. Okay, so at the moment, momentum's up, trend is up. We just want to see what's going to happen, whether we get that sort of action. Okay, like I said, you'd be looking for two things: pop up, pull back, hold, or we're going to look for something like, maybe a deeper flush there, and then that move back down to 101.75. Copper's been good. When it's risk on, copper gets bought up. It's not really, linked to the US dollar at the moment. 15-minute chart. So US dollar started to rally about here. Okay, and copper was a bit late, but did rally along with it, which would mean generally when the US dollar is rallying, commodities, anything based in US dollars is getting cheaper. But it's also supply demand. Demand's higher. Inflation, all that sort of thing is adding to the pressure to the upside with copper. Now, copper still, potentially it's just reacted down off that 104.99. You can see here, reacted down and off. Whether that's going to hold, so I'd either be looking for two things, one of two things actually, that lower high to pressure down, or you're going to see that sort of, maybe form a bit of a base and it's going to punch through, okay, on its way back up to sort of that 107.18 area. Okay, so Bitcoin, over the cryptocurrencies, that was sort of the open, a little flush higher, and then it sank. Lower highs pressured the market down to 45,400, where it flushed that level, bounced straight back again. So if you're trading off that level, it's kind of tough. We're on the 15-minute chart. Would have been hard to get a higher low off that level. Your only sort of minor higher low was just in here, and you would have had to buy. For me anyway, the way I trade, I want to be off the MAs. When the MAs are up, and selling on the way down. Off the MAs when the MAs are down. And this is sort of the first real opportunity off that chart, the 15-minute chart, around 4600 now. That was a good little trade anyway. Still powered up to sort of that 46,800 area. But for me now, what I'd be looking for is a potential, that flush through and then a lower high to pressure back down again. But, the way they are, this could just keep jamming high. You could get a bit of consolidation around here and we're going to move up to 47,570. Okay, with Ethereum, this leg up here really hasn't still a bit like Bitcoin, hasn't really had a pullback. So it could be it's just dragging a lot of buyers before we start to sink again. In that case, I'll be looking for that lower high and move back into 34.43. Otherwise, I wouldn't have minded, since I've drawn these levels up or this move up, it's actually popped up. So I wouldn't mind a bit of a pullback before we start to want to get long. Pull back to the MAs, but the cryptos tend not to do that as much. They tend to just get out of hand and people chase it higher. You want something like this ideally, okay, which is potentially maybe that's just what we've seen. Look for another pullback, little minor high low, and see if you can work that breakout and see if you can move up to 36, 35. So that's all I wanted to talk about there, guys. So end of the day, we'll see how that all goes, see how it all pans out, and we'll chat again tomorrow. If you do like what you hear, great if you can leave us a like on our YouTube channel, and also help us, build the community and subscribe to our YouTube community. Okay, so be a lot more information on that, a lot more material playing out, a lot more educational stuff, and I will do these each day. So there's just a morning report, and we have the trading plan as well, which I pump out. It's more of a blog. So if you want more information on that, anything else, just jump onto the website, www.tradethestructure.com. All right, guys, until tomorrow, we'll speak to you soon.